Lesson 69, Factoring Quadratic Trinomials. First, let's go over some of the terminology when we're talking about trinomials. So a monomial is a single expression of the form ax to the n, where a is a real number and n is a whole number. So we've got a variable, it's being raised to a whole number power, and it's got some coefficient on the beginning. Now the whole number power, that could be 0, so something like 4, you see in the examples there, you could think of that as 4x to the 0, so that's a monomial. And that coefficient could be a negative number, like negative 2x to the 15th. It could also be an irrational number, any real number. That's a monomial, from the Greek monos, meaning one. Now, binomial is when we take two monomials and add them together. So x plus 4, remember x still has a coefficient and an exponent, 1x to the 1 plus 4, or x minus 4 would also count, even though it doesn't look like a sum because that's the sum of x and negative 4. So trinomial is when we've got 3 that we're adding together. So x squared minus 3x minus 18, or x squared plus 7x plus 12. Now the trinomials that we'll be dealing with in this lesson are quadratic trinomials. These are trinomials where the highest power of any of the variables is 2. So both of those examples up there are quadratic trinomials because x squared, that's the highest power that we have on any of those variables. Now when we're factoring these, we already know how to form trinomials by multiplying together two binomials using our distributive property. Now we need to make sure that each term in each of the binomials gets multiplied by each term in the other binomial. And one way to remember how to do this properly is using this memory device FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. So with this one, so we start with first. X times x gives us x squared. Then outer, x times negative 2 gives us negative 2x. Inner, 7 times x gives us 7x. And last, 7 times negative 2 gives us negative 14. We combine our like terms, we end up with x squared plus 5x minus 14. With this one here, first, x times x gives us x squared. Outer, x times negative 4 gives us negative 4x. Negative 3 times x, inner, gives us negative 3. And last, negative 3 times negative 4 gives us positive 12. Couple of things that we should notice here. This first term is the product of the first two terms of the binomial. So x and x give us x squared. X and x give us x squared. Also, the third term, this one here, is the product of the second terms of the binomial. So this negative 14 here is 7 times negative 2. This positive 12 is negative 3 times negative 4. Other thing we should notice is that the coefficient on the second term, so the 5 in this 5x, or the negative 7 in this negative 7x, is the sum of the second terms of the binomials. So 7 plus negative 2 is going to give us 5, negative 3 plus negative 4 is going to give us negative 7, right? Because this 7 combined with this x, and the negative 2 combined with this x to give us negative 2x and 7x, we combine the like terms, and we get 5x. So with those things in mind, we can do it in the other order to go from a trinomial to two binomials. So remembering that the first terms of the binomials need to multiply together to give us the first term of the trinomial, and then the second terms of the binomials will multiply together to get us the last term of the trinomial, and will add together to give us the coefficient of the second term of the trinomial. Don't get those mixed up. So they multiply together to give you the last term of the trinomial, but they add together to give you the coefficient of the second term. Let's look at an example. X squared plus 3x minus 10. So first off, the first term of the trinomial is going to be the product of the first terms of the binomials. So that x squared, we can easily get that from x times x. We don't know what the other terms of the binomials will be yet, so we'll leave those blank. Now we need to find two numbers that are going to add together. Their sum is going to give us the coefficient there, 3, and their product is going to give us this last term, negative 10. For this problem, the numbers that work are 5 and negative 2. 5 times negative 2 gives us negative 10, and 5 plus negative 2 gives us 3. So they multiply together to give you the last term, and they add together to give you the coefficient of the second term. Now, how did I find those? Well, notice that they need to multiply together to give us a negative number. And the only way to have two numbers that multiply together to give you a negative number is if one is positive and one is negative. So we know that we're going to have a positive number and a negative number. Then we look at our factors of 10, 1, 2, 5, and 10. The only way to take those factors of 10 and have two of them that where one is positive and one is negative, and they add together to give you positive 3 is going to be 5 and negative 2. So 5 and negative 2 still multiply to give you negative 10. They add to give you 3. Then we plug those in as the second terms of the binomial. So we get x plus 5 times x minus 2. And you can easily check your work at this point by then applying FOIL to this, and you should, after you combine your like terms, end up with the same trinomial that we had at the beginning. Let's do another example. Negative 5x plus x squared plus 6. Now with this one, before you start trying to factor this, you need to make sure it's in the proper format. Notice we've got negative 5x plus x squared plus 6. We always want to write our polynomials in descending order of the variable. It doesn't change the value of them, but it is going to affect how we work with them. Descending order of the variable, remember, means that the highest power on the variable comes first. So x squared, then negative 5x because that's x to the first, and then 6 comes last because that's 6x to the 0. So the power of the variable goes down each one. That's always how we want to write it. And if it isn't, we need to change it to that. Please be careful also, the negative 5x changes to minus 5x when we reorder it. Don't lose that negative there. Now we can do what we were doing before, where the first terms of the binomials will give us the first term of the trinomial as their product, so x times x. Now to find the second terms there. So we need two numbers that multiply together to give us 6 and add together to give us negative 5. Now if they're multiplying together to give us positive 6, we either need two negatives or two positives. And we see that they add together to get negative 5. The only way to get two numbers that will multiply to get a positive number and will add to get a negative is if they're both negative. If we have two positives, they can't add together to a negative. So we know we're dealing with two negative numbers and they're factors of 6. So the only factors of 6, the only way to break down 6 in a way that will give us a sum of negative 5 is going to be negative 2 and negative 3. So negative 3 plus negative 2 will give us negative 5, and negative 3 times negative 2 will give us positive 6. We plug those in as the second terms of our binomials, x minus 3 times x minus 2. We can easily check that by applying FOIL to this.